Hello and welcome to the channel. Thought I'd review one of my best ever races on Zwift. I don't know what got into me on this race. Well, I kind of do know what got into me. I have been throughout pretty much this whole year. I've been in training for triathlons and swimming and track and field and all these other crazy activities that I do. So I put my body under a lot of stress throughout the year. And even with all that going on, I've still been doing a lot of Zwift racing. Normally I'm part of a series or something like that, so there's always something that I have to do, some race I have to do, or some event, all of that stuff. And all that happened during my training season. So I put my legs under a lot of stress throughout the year, and they're always tired to some degree. I try and taper for my in real life races or even some of my Zwift races, but for the majority of the time they just always seem to be full of lactate. But recently, I'm going to say over the past almost 2 months, I haven't been running. The last planned runs or extended planned runs where I was running over several days or throughout training and stuff like that, that was back in, I'm going to say, September. Well, actually, I did a 14K road race in September. Very hilly road race that really beat my quads up coming down out of the hills. And I also did a 5K race, which was more recently. But since my last sprint triathlon, which was at the end of August, I really haven't run on a regular basis. I really only run those 2 in real life races. I haven't run on a treadmill or on Zwift at all. So my legs have sort of been getting more rest. I haven't been racing as much on Zwift as I had been throughout the year. Maybe 2 to 3 times a week. But I've been swimming a lot. I still continue to swim. I enjoy being in the water. The water relaxes me. So I still swim. But on this particular day, for this particular race, I had slept the night before for almost 9 hours, which is insanely rare for me. At most, if I'm doing good, I may get somewhere close to 8 hours of sleep. On the regular, it's really around about 6 to 6.5 hours of sleep. But this day I was tired the night before, and I got in bed somewhat early, and normally when I get in bed early, I don't sleep that much or sleep that well. I still wake up early as I would normally do for work, sometimes even earlier than that. For some reason, my body shut me down, and I slept for almost 9 hours. So I was very well rested for this race. The race didn't happen until later on in the day, so I pretty much had the whole day off. And hadn't done much in between. And I got on and I did my normal warm-up, my normal 20-minute warm-up. And I felt fine on it. Normally my legs do feel a little bit lethargic when I go into that warm-up, but for this one, they just did. So I'm like, okay, I'm thinking this is going to be somewhat of a normal race for me. And started off with not much fanfare, and we didn't really go out hot in this race. We had a decent sized crowd, which was kind of strange for me here on the Northeast. Normally in the Northeast in the US, when I do these particular races in ACAT, there's really not that many riders in it. And if there is, most of them will drop in the beginning, and then it's really only anywhere between 2 to 5 people racing towards the end. So I was pleasantly surprised to have this group of riders that seem to be in the race. So for the most part, the race was going well. We weren't pushing hard. We had a decent pace, nothing out of the ordinary. You can see my heart rate at 139, 140 beats. That's actually low for me. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that I was well rested. Normally I'm not well rested when I go into a race. Even when I go into an in real life race, I'm not well rested because I cannot sleep any length of time the night before race. I try and get my rest a day or two before, but race night, can't sleep. I recently went into a race where I had 2 hours total of sleep. Just couldn't turn my brain on. Brain just kept going, spinning. Thoughts here, thoughts there. Thought about the race, what I was going to do in the race, how I was going to do in the race. All these things just go through my head, and I just can't turn off. I can be exhausted, and my brain will just not allow me to shut down. I could turn the lights off, get it all dark, put on some ambient noise or something like that, and I will feel like I'm going to fall asleep. But the majority of the time, I just can't turn off. And sometimes I'll actually fall asleep for like 40 minutes, and then I'll wake up, and then once I wake up, then that's when the brain starts to go again, and I can't fall asleep. So for this one, well rested, feeling great. Let's get in there, let's do this. And for the most part, this whole first section it played out great for me, because there were no attacks. There was nobody really pushing any hard pace that was out of the normal for an A category race. And as far as A category, I was steadily moving up in the ranks, or what I call the ranks of an A cat, where my average power had gone from like low 4.2, 4.3 watts per kilogram to more on a normal basis of 4.5, 4.7, 4.8 watts per kilogram in a comfortable 20-minute race. Now I know a lot of times that's due to the fact that my sprint power at the end is so high that it raises my average up. But for the most part, at the end of a race, I'm lucky if I can hit 1100 watts in a sprint and hold that power for any significant amount of time. Unless the people that I'm racing with allow the pace to come down in anticipation of that sprint. If somebody doesn't attack and run off, and I have to chase them, and everybody just sits back and tries to save it for the end, for the sprint, that actually spells bad news for them. Because when I'm rested going into the sprint for any length of time, I mean, it could be 30 seconds, it could be a minute, that my power graph or my timeline down on the bottom, if it's in blue green, that spells trouble at the end for anybody that's going to sprint against me. So as a word, I don't like to give my strategy secrets away for somebody who could potentially be racing me, but it's just a fact. If you let me recover, which blue and green is for me, is recovery. If you let me recover for any length of time, That's going to allow me to not so much as get high power output. It's going to allow me to get sustained high power for 15 seconds, 20 seconds, sometime longer. So that's the key. Anytime you're dealing with a sprinter, don't let a sprinter sit in recovery right before a sprint. You got to get that person out of it. You got to put on some power, either make them chase before they go into sprint, or make them chase early enough to where, I like to say, ding their legs before they get ready to go into that final sprint. But just don't give them a lot of recovery time. You give them recovery time, then you're going to be in trouble anytime. And I would say, always go on to Zwift Power and see who you're competing against. I know there's times where people will jump into a race at last minute, and I have it happen to me all the time. I'll go on Zwift Power to see what kind of... I go in there to look for sprinters, and I look for people who can do 5-minute power at a high rate for an extended period of time. So for those 5-minute power people, I will sort and see who can go along a 5-minute power that's in that race. And then I will sort to see who has that 15-second watts per kilogram. Don't look at the watts overall, because that's deceiving. Look at the watts per kilogram. That's the column, 15-second watts per kilogram. That's the column that you want to sort on to see where those sprinters are. And a lot of times I'll go in and I'll check and see that, okay, I can see that I'm the sprinter in the group. And sometimes my legs are either I've already raced or did something else earlier in the day that will affect that. But for the most part, you can look at those numbers and see who those sprinters are. And I will go and check that and see if I'm the sprinter in the group. And I've gone into quite a few races where, oh yeah, I'm clearly the sprinter in the group. But then get out in the race, and then there's somebody in there that's a better sprinter than I am. Or I'll go in and look at and see who those 5-minute power guys are, and there's no 5-minute power guys in there. And then I get in the race, and then there's somebody who goes off the front and is just gone, and you can't catch them because they've been holding 6 watts or 5.5 watts per kilogram for 5 minutes, and they just ride away from you. Those are those people that jump in at the last minute where you don't see them in Zwift Power beforehand. There's another website out there that you can go and check, and where you can actually, where it'll show you race predictions, where the race predicts that you will finish in that race. And basically all that is doing is looking at your Zwift ranking score and sorting based off that Zwift racing score to say who has the better ranking. And then more than likely that person would finish first. That can be deceiving too, because you don't know at what stage in that progress or when they got that score that they may be in. Like, take my case for instance. Early in the year, well, not early in the year, I'm going to say midway through the summer, when my fitness level was at its peak, I had actually got my Zwift ranking score down to 46. It was insane. Yeah, I got it down to 46. I never thought I would have got a number like that, but I got it down to 46. And it had me very highly ranked. And that 46 sat there for, I'm going to say at least a month and a half, maybe 2. But towards the end of that 2 months, I had so much fatigue in my legs from all the training and racing and all the activities that I've done throughout the year that I just could not could not ride fast. I couldn't produce any power. My sprint was just, I couldn't even hit 1,000 watts in my sprint. It's because my legs were just overly fatigued. But if you look at my ranking score and you put up my ranking score, oh, this guy ranks at 46. He's just going to destroy this group. And I couldn't do it because I was just tired. And so now, after I've been slowly allowing what I call, I'm not going to call it, it's my training peaks. That's where I track my fitness level. My fitness score comes from training peaks. I had taken it this year up to 91. I've been slowly allowing that number to come down now that I'm not in real life racing and my triathlon season is over. I've been letting that number come down so I can get my legs to recover from a long season. Bringing all that stuff down, getting to a point to where I'm feeling more comfortable racing and knowing that, you know, I can produce the kind of power numbers that I should be able to produce. That's not the reason why I'm allowing my fitness number to come down. I'm allowing that to come down so that I can recover, so that I can have somewhat of an off season, so that when I start training again, say in January, my fitness level isn't already too high and then I'm burnt out by the start of the season or something like that. So I'm just trying to let all those numbers come down, trying not to race as much, trying to limit my racing to maybe 2 times a week. I'm still doing some of the Zwift workouts. I still enjoy doing the workouts, so I still do those. But even with that, I try and not do those at the level where I'm trying to increase my fitness. It's actually more so to just something to keep my mind busy and my body busy, doing something that I enjoy, but not doing it at a level that I'm trying to improve my performance. So what I've been doing with that is I've been reducing my FTP on Zwift. And my FTP was at 299, I believe it was. It was 299. So I had reduced that down to 287. And when I go into my workouts, I will work out with that reduced FTP. And if I want to take it down even more, then that's when I will adjust the bias. You can only adjust the bias down in the workouts 25%. So I can only bring it down to 75%. Sometimes I want it even lower than that. And then that's what reducing my FTP will do for me, because it'll bring that whole number down. So for a while I've been riding at around about 287 for my FTP. And you'll actually see that at the end of this race. And so going into this race, I was feeling good. I was feeling confident that I could stick with the front group. I didn't really get a chance to look at the Zwift power before this race, and that was because I hadn't really anticipated on doing this race. I was going to do just a group ride. I was thinking about riding with the pace partners, and didn't feel like riding with the pace partners, so I was looking for group rides that were about an hour long, that had low wattage, that would allow me to ride at around about a zone 2 pace. But there was really nothing out there. Everything I saw was either too low or it was too short. So I saw this on the schedule, and I knew I wanted to complete this series, and I didn't really care about trying to score well with time for the GC. So I jumped into this. Said, okay, well, let me get this one done. Normally I would have done it later in the week, but I decided, oh, let me jump in now and get this done, and then I won't have to worry about doing it during the week. And I looked at the numbers, and when I saw 16 people, I was like, well, that's a decent amount of people for a late night ACAT race here in the Northeast. I said, well, this should go well. But as you can see, we dropped most of the riders in this. Most of them had fall off, and now we're about 7 people strong through this portion of the race. And I'm just looking at it like, okay, my heart rate's showing 162. That's not really all that high, so that means I'm still not really working that hard. In most of my races, at this point, I'm somewhere in the 170s. So I'm not stressed out at all too much in this race. There were a couple of times where I peaked up a little bit. You can see by my graph that I have a lot of deep orange on here, suggesting that, I've been pushing kind of hard. A lot of that is due to the fact that I dropped my FTP. So because I dropped my FTP, these oranges look like I've done a lot more of them. You don't see as much blue and green in there. Had I kept my FTP up at 299, then you would actually see a little bit more blue and green in this, and not as much as this dark red. So some of that's just due to that. So keep that in mind, because my power level is still at the point where I could ride at that 299 FTP level, but this graph isn't showing it. I'm riding at that level, but my graph doesn't really reflect that much. But you'll notice that I'm dropping into some green. If I'm dropping into some green, like I said, that's recovery for me. And there would probably be, more of that green in here if I had left my FTP where it was at 299. But you can see is relatively easy. I'm not going to say easy, but I'm able to cover any attacks that happen. Like that was a smallish type attack. It wasn't all that big. He didn't really go that long, so it didn't stop me from covering that and getting back in it. And I wasn't really going to let anybody get away in this race. I wanted to be able to sprint the people in this race. So if somebody tried to go long, I was going to go with them and then wait for them to either slow down or maybe not slow down, and then force them to have to sprint me. And the reason why I was feeling that way is because I felt great in this race. My legs just didn't feel like they were overly stressed. Now you can see that my heart rate's going up. Now it's in the 170s. 170s don't bother me much anymore. 170s used to be a cue that I was pushing hard, getting a little too hard in the race. My max heart rate now is 192. So 172 is 20 beats off that. I'm doing great. I'm not all too worried about 172. I've actually done a race where it came down to the sprint and my heart rate was at 190 when I started the sprint, and still did very well in it. I think I still pushed over 1100 watts. And I think I won that race. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I know I have the video. I record all my races. I have them all on a thumb drive. Most of the races that I haven't uploaded to YouTube a whole lot of my races, but I'm gonna try and upload a few more. I'm just getting to the point where I'm uploading some more current stuff. I mean, this race was on October 8th, which was the day after my birthday. Day after my 60th birthday. Yes, when you see 60 along my name, it says 60 plus, but I just turned 60. And you may wonder, how could a 60-year-old be doing this stuff? I just tell people, I'm not normal. I'm not your normal 60-year-old. Now here, these guys made this break on this hill. And I had to put in a dig to get them. I did not want to get dropped on the back part of that hill. I wanted to make sure that I stayed on the power all the way over the top. Now that rolled me by them. I didn't mind rolling by them. I didn't mind being out front. That would actually allow me to release some of that stress of pushing up that hill. But I wanted to make sure that nobody got away from me. So I definitely wanted to push that hill. Now I was a little nervous that was going to take a little bit of the steam out of my legs for the sprint, seeing as we only had about 1.6K to go. But I was allowed to roll down these little rollers and take some of the stress off. You can see me dropping down into the blue. That's allowing me to recover. I was able to get behind the other riders and just relax a little bit. Anytime I went downhill, I would let off the pedals and let it coast. I make sure I get my coast, even if they're only for a second. Those things help. They help. They will build up over time. So at this point, I'm just trying to recover from that push up that hill. And it's 1K to go, so I know this is going to come down to a sprint. I don't know if anybody's going to go long or not. If they go long, I'm going with them. If they don't go long, then they have to deal with me in the sprint. So I have an arrow. If I have an arrow, then I don't mind going first. I think I have enough power in my legs that if I have an arrow, I will go first. I won't sit in the back and try and get a draft off people. I will go. So at this point, we have half a K to go. This thing is ready to jump off. I've done half K long sprints and have done well on them. But this one, I was kind of trying to wait for a little bit, trying to wait and see if anybody was going to break. I knew where I wanted to go break, and then I broke. Now this surprised me. I did not think that guy would go around me. But he went around me, but what he didn't... I hit my power band, and my power hand is my cadence. Look what my cadence was. It was 120. I was easily able to get back around him and win this race. Now, what surprised me was it felt like I was in a zone. And when I say in a zone, let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to back this up a little bit. And I want you to notice my power when it gets to, say, over 1200, and it stays there. How long it's there. I think that was the key to me on this race. And I had perfect symmetry between my push-pull. So now I'm at 1200 watts. and I'm still over 1200, and I'm still over 1200, and I'm still over 1200, and I'm still over. It finally dropped off. I don't think I've ever done that before at the end of a race. Well, I can say I've never done that before at the end of a race. Held that power that high for that long at the end of a race. And it was all because I was it, I was in symmetry with the bike. If you're not pulling on your bars when you sprint, you're not getting all the power that you can get. You're just not getting it. There's so much extra power that you can get. When you see a sprint racer on a bike sprinting for the line, and you see them rocking that bike side to side, that's because they are pulling on the bars. They're getting that extra added power from their upper body. You gotta utilize your upper body to get that extra power. And I was able to do that. And what made that so effective is that I was in sync with my push-pull and my cadence. Normally, if I go over 115 on my cadence, anything above that, it's hard for me to get in sync with that and pull the bars at the same time. And my power will start to drop. As soon as I go over 115, my power will start to drop because I'm starting to lose that synchronicity, I'm going to say. I'm going to pause this here on my graph. I start to lose that synchronicity, and that's when my power will start to come down. A lot of times that don't happen until towards the end of the sprint. So I will ramp up, and then I ramp, and then it'll hold for a second, and then I'll start to lose that synchronicity, and then the power will start to come down. And my cadence may even go higher, but I'm losing that pulling effect that gives me that added power, and then it'll start to tail off. Either that, or I'll start to feel the fatigue in my legs, in my quads, in my hamstrings, and my calves, and then the power will start to tail off. For some reason, I was on it for this one. And if we take a look at here, you can see that my peak power was 1409. My heart rate was 187. This is crazy. I've never had that kind of power with that kind of heart rate. Normally my heart rate's at 192, and I may have 1200 watts or 1100 watts, and then I can't breathe for 30 seconds after I stop pedaling, or I start to dry heave like I'm about to throw up all over the place because I need water at that point because I'm breathing so hard. But this graph looked fantastic. I was just blown away by this race and the result that I put out there for it. And this was actually the race. Look how evenly my race tracked with my previous best. Now, your previous best isn't one race. That's not one race. That's race over race over race, where you start to build up different parts of that graph a little bit by time, or this one or that one, or it may nudge here and one day on one race, and may nudge here on one race. This thing tracked my best ever results over time. I couldn't believe that when I saw this. Now, this is what I mean. Look where my FTP went. My FTP went to 316 from 287. 287 is where I knocked it down. It should have been 299. So it was really jumped from 299 to that 316. And I was just blown away by this race. And this race was the one that started me on my track to going from an ACAT. I'm gonna say a good ACAT, somewhere between. I was averaging on my races for 20 minutes 4.7, 4.8. This one ticked me over 5. And when this one ticked me over 5, I started, they shortly after that, on October 10th, they moved me into, or Zwift Power moved me up to an A plus cat. Now I stayed there for like a week, and then I didn't race too much, or some of my race results weren't all that good. I don't know if it's because I was doing recovery stuff or whatever. But shortly after that, I fell back down to A, and I was fine with that. But then recently, I did another good race. I've been doing the tiny races and been having really good results in the tiny races, and that had to move me back up to A plus. So I'm kind of enjoying being in A plus. I'm enjoying not racing as much as I've raced before. Normally, I would race um, 3 to 4 times a week, including doing all my training and training stuff that I would normally do. But now just um, 2 times a week seems to work very well for me, and it allows me to go into races fresher. So that's the best race that I've ever had on Zwift, and I wanted to share that. And thank you for watching my video. Tune in again for the next one. See ya!